Go ahead. We're recording.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's February 4th. This is the Cluster API provider for Azure office hours and meeting. We are a project under the umbrella of SIG Lifecycle, and thus we're a Kubernetes group. Oh my, sorry, my desk is jumping around. And let's all adhere to the general standards of conduct, basically be nice to each other, let everyone speak, and we can try and raise hands through Zoom, although we don't have that many people, so we'll see how it goes. Please add your names here under the attendees list, just so we have a record of who's here. Do we have anybody who's here for the first time? Who wants to say hello, or anybody wants to chime in with anything random before we get going? I'll take that as a no, I guess. Okay, so for open discussion.
Oh, Garvin was trying to speak, but we can't hear you now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't even see the notification.
I don't think your mic is working.
Well, you can always type something in the discussion chat if you want, or if you get your mic working later, definitely just interrupt us. Okay, I guess the first discussion topic, David, Justice, you want to talk about machine pool machines, max search, max unavailable?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Looks like the screen is not updated. Just a heads up. There are more topics in the agenda, or at least maybe it's my video.
No, I've had issues with this before when we play games with the family and Zoom doesn't want to wake up. Let me reshare.
Okay. No, Garvin, we can't hear you. Sorry. Interrupt us when you do get audio.
Does this look any better, David, or is it still not updated?
It is blank. All right,
I have one more thing to try. Sorry. And then someone else can maybe try to share. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I can share screen.
Sometimes if I click optimize for video clip before I share, then it's happier. Yes? No? Oh, what's it doing? To share your audio, please install the Zoom audio device. No, thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, finally. Okay, go ahead. I was just saying this is my first time joining the meeting. I wanted to talk about the setting up the development environment. So, but I'll let you guys carry on and you let me know when I can jump in.
Sure, yeah, we can just do that, I guess, in the open discussion topics. Do people see my screen now, or should somebody else share?
Yes, we see it.
Oh, good. All right, David.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Okay, so just wanted to give a quick update. I've pushed out a bunch of new changes for machine pool machines, max surge, and max unavailable. At this point, I do need to rebase it since we had some pretty large changes just flow in. But if you were to pull down that branch right now, you would be able to use async machine pools with machine pool instances, VMSS VMs actually being broken out into their own resources. So now there's machine pools and machine pool machines. They work as they currently do today without max surge, max unavailable. So if you go and you scale up, scale down, you'll see a very responsive experience, and you'll see machine pool machines pop up. They'll come into creating. It works with over provisioning in VMSS as well. So even if you're over provisioning, it doesn't respond and start tearing down machines. So it's the behavior is as you would expect it. Now time to get upgrade in place. So unfortunately, this is a really big PR at this point. It's nearly 3,000 lines, which is kind of sad. So I feel bad for reviews. If there's ideas about how to break it up a little bit more, I'd be totally open to that. Anything to make it a little bit easier. So at this point, my plan is to take the coordinate and drain functionality from machines and and apply it to machine pool machines, with the hope that eventually we'll bubble that back up into CAPI and have a solution where CAPI is responsible for coordinating and draining these machines and kind of managing that portion of the life cycle. Basically, all you would do is just mark it for delete and then maybe decorate it that it's ready to be coordinated drained and have CAPI deal with it. But I think for expedience, we can get it in place working today, show how it works, and then use that as a template to take back into CAPI and maybe also put out for like AWS and others and see if that pattern fits. Does anybody have any feedback or any questions? Cecile?
I haven't looked at, or I haven't reviewed the PR in depth yet, so this might already be taken care of, but I'm just wondering, do you have any plans to keep the code that we're planning to move upstream to CAPI in the future kind of separate and isolated so that it doesn't become tightly coupled with CAPZ code in the future with like updates?
Yeah, so really what happens or where this will get plugged in, or at least right now, is a machine pool machine. When we find out that this machine isn't running the latest model, we then mark it for delete. We delete it in the Kubernetes API, marks that machine for delete. In the delete reconcile, we'll go in and we'll see, should we drain this? Should we coordinate drain this? And then we'll start a long running operation where we'll asynchronously coordinate and drain. And then after that's done, actually delete the infrastructure underneath it. So that coordinate and drain is actually just really kind of just off on its own. It'll probably just be like 2 funcs. And then when those 2 funcs go away, then we'll just change the reconciler a little bit. So yes, it should be really focused. The thing that the selection logic is the thing that we really need to think about, and probably need a second PR after this to really start becoming smarter about how we select nodes that we're going to destroy. So right now, I kind of take the naive approach of saying, hey, I'm going to pick out anything that's failed, anything that's broken, and we'll clean those out first. And then go anything with an older model, we'll clean those up. And finally, I only start to remove ready nodes, like good, successful nodes when we must. So I think we need a order of grading. And we need to start taking into account pod disruption budgets. We have a lot of stuff, and hopefully that's not something that we're using individually. Like hopefully other people can use that too, or we can suss it out from other projects, maybe cluster autoscaler or something like that. So yeah. Anyone else?
Excuse me. All right, David, you got the next topic as well.
Yeah, so part of machine pools is the backing with VMSS. And VMSS has this idea of a model. And the model means like, what image reference am I using? What does my virtual machine template look like? So a VMSS, a virtual machine scale set, is really a template plus instances that it built out with this template. And when you update the template, it shows in the API that the model is out of date, that it's not running the latest model. And really, this is how we tell that a machine needs to be reformatted, or we need to replace it with a newer version of this model. Cecile recently put in a PR for VM extensions. Now, the order of the reconciler for VMSS goes, I'm going to go create or update the VMSS. Then I'm going to add any roles that are needed for identities. And then I'm going to add VM extensions. So the creator update to a VM extension is actually manipulating the VMSS model, which is really counterintuitive because it has its own API calls, but those calls actually manipulate the VMSS. In the PR, I actually have taken the VMSS extensions and I added them to the put for VMSS itself. So the model is now consistent. So we don't update the model a second time, but I think we need to figure out how we use that VMSS extension and suss out the status so that we can differentiate the error types that we're getting back. Like, did infrastructure just not, did Azure Fabric fall over and didn't build your machine? Or did the error come out of the cloud init script? Like, we couldn't join to the cluster or something like that. So there's like two different categories of error. Cecile could probably talk a little bit more about that. Do you want to explain the VMSS extension or the VM extension?
Sure. Yeah. So the way it's set up works great with VMs and VM extensions. It doesn't work so well with VMSS, I think, because of the model thing. But really, what we're trying to do with the extension is leverage the Sentinel file, which was recently added in CAPI, as soon as we can get that as part of V1 Alpha 4, and then use that as like a bootstrap failure signal or success signal. And the VM extension will just run a simple script, which will pass into it as part of the CAPZ VM extension properties. And it will just run a simple script that checks for the presence of that file and retries for a given amount of time. And then after we time out, then that will be our signal that, you know, we can find the files, so bootstrapping was not successful. So we can mark the condition for bootstrapping as false or bootstrapped as false. And so the idea to separate them was really to separate that from like machine creation, was that first of all, it shouldn't block like VM creation because it's more of a check for like user information. It doesn't actually do anything functional. And then the other thing is it should be like very clearly like distinct errors between I failed to create a virtual machine because Azure returned an error, or I have something wrong with my VM properties, and the VM is there, it's in running state, but it wasn't bootstrapped as a Kubernetes node. So I think it's really important that we keep those errors separate no matter what we do, since that was the whole point of having the extension. But I think it makes complete sense what you said, David, to like not do that after and update the model and then have to like roll the instances. Although I'm kind of surprised that's the behavior. I would think that since an extension is not really part of the instance itself, it would just add it to each instance already present. Apparently it does not do that. So that's my bad for not checking. But yeah, I think it makes sense if we just do it as part of the create, so that it adds it to every instance. And then we just need a way to like separate the error we get back if we get an error.
Yeah, I think we can still use that API to get the extension and get the status for it. And it also, I believe it shows up in the VMSS body. Like if you, same with VM. So if you use VM get instance view and you have the expanded VM, I think you actually see the extensions as well.
Yeah,
so
there's a VM extension API, a VMSS extension API, and a VMSS VM extension API. So we can also use the VMSS VM one to like look at individual instance status.
Awesome. Maybe we could get some time to pair up on that a little bit. Cool. Any questions?
Nope. All right. I tried to write down what you guys were talking about, but some of that was a little dense for me, so we'll see. Next, Cecile, you want to talk about the patch release?
Yeah, so we have 2 bug fix PRs that one is merged and one is still open, but I think very close to merging, which are pretty important bugs. Like one is for the spot instances. There's a failure to serialize the max price with controller runtime. And the other one is for the managed VNet scenario. In the delete case, we try to delete the NSG, which is really bad. So I think we should get those out in a release sooner rather than later. To clarify, they're not regressions from the latest release. They're actually like missing or like bugs in the original implementation of those features. So it's not like a recent regression, but I still think we should fix them. So I'm thinking of, if everyone's okay with that, of just doing a 0412 release just for those 2 commits cherry picked on top of 0411 as soon as we have both merged, if nothing else comes up. How does that sound? Good? Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, and then if anything, if anyone learns of anything else that is important, like an important bug fix, or like if we find something in the release that we should dive deeply into, like investigate, then like please like let us know so we can take that into account.
Cool. Any questions about the patch release? All right, Nader, what's wrong with our prow config?
No, I'm trying to add this PR. I'm trying to add jobs for like the 04 branch. And one of them keeps giving me this weird error and I don't know what it is. Like in Bazel config, some error thingy. I can, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with it. I tried a couple of different things. I keep getting the error. So if you go look at the infra Bazel job failed, you'll see what failed. And anyway, if anybody wants to, can take a look at it. It doesn't have to be now.
So is it
Volunteers?
failing because of the loggers?
No, it's failing because of how I configured the jobs, even though I copied them.
Okay.
From like I copied our existing configs into like dash release 04 files and like changed to make it run on the release branch, like the 04 branch. But just like one job, which is the coverage, PR coverage and the pre-submit, it's not happy with it. Bazel is not happy with it, even though it looks the same as the other one.
I think it's because there's no group defined for release 04. Like we've never had a release 04 email before.
But that's the only one that's complaining in this job. Maybe if I fix that, I'll complain about other stuff.
Yeah, it's possible it just complains about the first error it sees.
Okay.
I
don't know how to set that up though. Like, where do I create that?
Let's pair on that offline. I don't think we need necessarily an email for 04. We're just using that as PR
Okay.
signal.
Yeah, I tried taking out the email. It complained that it doesn't have a tab. I tried putting a tab, but didn't like that. So anyway, I think something has to be defined somewhere else for it to use it, but I just don't know where the somewhere else is. Okay, that's it. For the next one is also mine. Just a quick update. The V1 Alpha 4, I think I've done most of the things. Just waiting for like Cappy to have a nightly build, which the PR is almost merged. I think it was like some small thing. It's like LGTM, but doesn't merge yet because there was one conflict. Once that's in, we can have nightly builds of Cappy with images and everything, and then I can hold that in, and then hopefully the end-to-end jobs can run. I'm rebasing now like this big cloud Azure thing, PR, which is fun. But after that, the only outstanding question I will have is like, do we want to have templates of the Alpha 3 so that we can run upgrade, or how does that work? I'm not sure about that. Everything else I think is done. if anybody has comments on that, they can put it in the PR, I guess.
So is that PR just adding the V1 Alpha 4 types, or is it also doing all the like controller runtime updates and all of that?
Yes, controller runtime updates.
Okay.
Well, I kind of have to because the CAPI now uses the new runtime, controller runtime, so, and Go 115, so I kind of had to do that all at once.
True. Okay, that was a bad example. What about like basically I'm thinking about the things that are in that V1 Alpha 3 to V1 Alpha 4 doc.
No,
Some of those items we'll have to take separately, right? Like implement the watch label and things like that.
no, I have to do all that stuff or else I wouldn't compile.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right.
But I didn't make our changes, whatever changes we want to do to the new alpha, like the new types.
Okay,
I didn't include that.
that makes sense. Okay, perfect. We can do those separately so they can be reviewed individually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's it for me.
Cool. Garvin, you had questions about the setting up a dev environment. Hopefully we have answers here.
So I'm just following the basic document that just says, hey, install Go, install kind, all that stuff, and then getting stuck on the Go get for the cluster API provider. For some reason, there's a dependency on something called JSON patch /v2. And I think this version of the module might be obsolete or something. When I put in a redirect in the Go mod, it seems to work. I put it in the chat. Let me. Can I share my screen so you could see what I'm seeing? Oh, host disable attendee sharing.
I can enable it. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Though Matt, you might have to
Yeah, I'll
unshare
stop
for a
sharing.
second.
Yeah. Can you guys see it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's basic, I'm just running and so these are the errors. Yesterday I put in a redirect in the Go mod for V3 instead, and that seemed to work. But I don't know if I'm missing something because you guys are working on this every day. Or I don't know if you just happen to have all this stuff already set up, so you're not setting up a new environment, so you're not experiencing that.
I don't know if I've actually tried Go get. Have you guys done Go get as opposed to just cloning the repo?
Maybe that's it. But then even if you,
I'm gonna try it.
yeah, or is all that stuff just vendored so it doesn't matter?
No, but the actual versions are going to be locked in. So when you do like a Go build within the project directory, you have the Go sum there, and that Go sum is going to say the exact versions to take. So we might run into an issue when we go to update this at some point in the future where it complains, and we'll have to navigate that. But
yeah, and I put in the link. I'm just following these directions here in terms of setting up the development environment. So maybe if it's a different process, or starting with cloning the repo or something like that, I do that instead.
Yeah, give cloning a try. I think you'll have better luck just doing a git clone and then doing a make binaries or make test within that directory.
Okay.
Could you please file an issue though for this error? Because if it's in our document, you shouldn't be running into this. So we should either change the document or figure out what's wrong.
Okay, will do.
And either way, the package should be Go gettable. That's just kind of a general.
Yep.
Thing.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of surprised it's not.
Well, I don't know. It's still churning away on my computer, so it may or may not succeed.
Yeah. I did a search for this particular error in this package. I think there's an issue with this particular package and that version, and not only with this project. Doesn't look like you guys are using it directly, but maybe some dependency. Yeah.
Okay. Any other dev tips or questions?
Yeah, any other dev tips would be appreciated. Just trying to actually get it to the point where I can change something, run it, and actually do an end-to-end test locally. That would be awesome.
Use Tilt. Tilt is dope. Even like if at first it looks complicated to set up, once it's set up, it's great.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to get to, the tilt part, to do that. And just wanting to make sure I'm actually following the right path, or a path that makes sense.
So I'm seeing the same errors here locally now that I tried to go get. So this is a general problem apparently.
Yeah.
Thanks for noticing.
I didn't get an error.
Oh really?
So, yeah, it's working for me.
It works on Cecile's machine.
It works
I'll
on
be
my
happy.
machine.
Is it, Cecile, is it possible it's in your Go source already? And why you
Maybe
may
let me
not
try
be?
to.
Yeah. Because it
Anyways,
may
we
have.
can, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
we can move on, and I'll try to get it not
And
working.
if there's anyone willing to pair with me just for a couple, minutes or so to see if I can get it going, I would appreciate that as well.
Yeah, of course. I can stay after the meeting if you have time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks,
Do
Cecile.
you mind unsharing so we can
Here, I got
share
it.
the? Great.
I guess I can force that. Where are we at? Oh, it's trying to share sound again. Oops, there we go. Oh, me, yeah. So David had an idea, I don't know, a month ago, and I've been tinkering on what I'm calling AZ Cappy, which is if you use the Azure command line, you can install an extension. And this is an extension that the idea is basically to make using Cappy easier, using CapZ easier specifically. Because if someone just wants to kick the tires and see what Cappy is all about, or CapZ, it's a pretty high bar. So the two ideas here basically, and this may never really see the light of day, or it may take off. We really don't know yet. I'm just kind of getting it ready. Two ideas are file off all the rough edges and also hold the user's hand as much as possible so that you could blender into a command line experience and say, effectively, I want to create a cluster, and it'll figure everything out like, oh, you didn't set these environment variables. Do you want to do that? You don't have a management cluster. Do you want to start one with kind, or do you want to maybe create one in AKS? What type? You didn't tell me what kind of cluster you want, so I'm going to ask you a few more questions, and then we'll enable some features, and then it'll just deploy the whole thing in one command line. That could at least help people really kick the tires, and also maybe generate some ideas that hopefully we could, bring upstream. Because anyway, and the other idea is right now flavors are the main way of specifying how you want to customize your cluster, but they're kind of little silos. They exist on their own. If you wanted to mix and match flavors, say you wanted to have IPv6 plus GPU nodes plus system assigned identity, that's essentially right now left as an exercise to you, the user, to look through all our templates, figure out how they work, or maybe create some end templates and then compare them and do some diffs and figure out, oh, well, if I put this here, then I probably end up with. And so so ideally we could have something where you just specify those options as flags, and tool emits a single template that has all the features you want. You don't have to mess around with a YAML yourself. So those are the ideas I had. I'm actually not quite ready to demo it yet. But I just want to let people know that's what I've been working on, because I haven't been doing much core stuff for a while. And I'm hoping to just open source this, see if anyone thinks it's interesting. Maybe we can all pile on it and make it better, or generate some ideas that go back upstream. Because I'm sensitive to the idea that this is kind of off the rails, and why aren't these? The obvious question is, why wouldn't you make the changes in Cluster Cuddle itself? I think the reason is some of this ends up being very Azure specific, and so it wouldn't make sense in Cluster Cuddle. Also, having a hard time seeing how we sort of break out of the flavors approach to doing templates. And so this is a way to just do it in a completely different way and see if that works better for our needs. All right, so I talked a lot. If anybody has any questions, go ahead.
David has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. David, please.
Hey, Matt.
Hey.
Really super excited to see this stuff. This is so cool. I have to ask, I'm not very familiar with Azure CLI or extensions. How would you use this? Like, if I was a user, like how would I get this? Like, is it actually shipped as is it part of Azure CLI? Like, what is this thing?
It's an extension, and so there's a built-in way. You can just say AZ extension add is a built-in command. It'll go off on the internet, download a Python bundle that adds new functionality to the CLI. We can, right now it's all just in my repo. So you would say like AZ extension add, mborsma, AZ cappy, and that'll be enough to get you going. The very next step, once we've had a few eyes on this, is to put it in the official extensions repo. And then it's even a little easier to install because you can say AZ extensions list, and cappy would show up as one of the extensions you can install. And you can even, if you're really into it, if you had a site that needed it, you can do things like when we're installing AZ, always install these extensions, stuff like that. So the extensions framework's pretty neat. And I know you know this, but I'm just saying this.
I think Nader also had a question.
Sorry, I can't see.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, sounds pretty cool. I would just suggest when you're like, instead of asking too many questions, like put as much defaults as makes sense.
Yeah.
Because sometimes CLI with like too many questions gets to be too hard to use.
Oh, for sure. And if it does ask questions, if it's always interactive, then you can't really script it. So like a lot of other AZ commands, there's a -- yes flag that just says yes to all the defaults.
Sounds cool.
Well, we'll see.
I have one thing. You said that it's, why wouldn't you do this in Cluster Cuddle? To me, they're two different things. I think Cluster Cuddle is more like setting up your management cluster and managing your management cluster, like upgrading the version of Cappy and all of that. And I think what you're trying to do is not at all trying to do that. It's more like creating workload clusters and setting up all the identity that goes around that. Because I think that's the big part right now that's like extremely manual, like having to create a service principal, set all those environment variables, set like your Azure location, your Azure VM size, like all that stuff that we can't put into Cluster Cuddle because it's like Azure specific. Otherwise, they would already be there. And I think like there is value in having that separate, like in the future, like eventually maybe it could be a plugin or something for Cluster Cuddle or for kubectl, but it's definitely not going to be in the core Cluster Cuddle anytime soon, right? So yeah, it makes sense to have that, I think.
Yeah, totally. This also allows us a place to become opinionated. Like you said, Cluster Cuddle and Cluster API is just about the infrastructure. We have to support all the options, everything that's available. But in this tool, we could maybe be more opinionated and have the defaults be, use machine resource set or whatever we think is a better way to go. So yeah, that's more value, hopefully. So definitely by the next meeting, I'll have we'll all have hopefully looked at this, and I'll give you the URL. Anything else to talk about? That was all the topics we had listed.
Oh, I just realized a quick question. Since we're going to do a new release like Alpha 4 and it's going to be all breaking and stuff, do we want to move anything out of the experimental stuff into like not experimental? Team pool seems pretty ready.
Peter. What's that? I'm sorry.
Team pool seems pretty ready to me. No? I don't know. Anyway, something to think about since we're like breaking everything anyway.
Well, that's one of the fun parts about it being the experimental folder. I don't feel so horrible if stuff breaks. But I do feel like no matter where it's at, I feel terrible when we have API breaking changes. Like that's just sadness, right? I don't know. Any strong opinions?
James is raising his hand.
Ames.
I can say something about having machine pools in experimental or not. So at Giants Forum, we have been using machine pools for some time, mainly on the API level, so using CRDs. So copy machine pools and copy Azure machine pools. So we did find some rough edges around it more than a few times. Latest has been the fix for spot max price that you talked about now. So that was a PR from Adrian from our team. So I don't think it's exactly ready now to be promoted outside of experimental. So maybe keeping it there for some time would be a better idea. I mean, just a feeling I got, so nothing concrete.
That's
I would
good
really
input.
thank you so much. That best input. Best input is people using it and telling us why. I would also feel much more comfortable with these new API changes that are going in with machine pool machines to get some user mileage as well, so that folks can, like Nicola just did, provide us that feedback and tell us if we're doing things right or wrong. And if we can get that quick rev cycle, that would be, in my mind, super valuable.
James, we couldn't hear what you were trying to say earlier. Is your mic
Can you hear
working
me
now?
now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I was driving earlier and I switched to my computer. Yeah, so I guess my audio wasn't working. I tried jumping in once or twice. Sorry to bring it back, but I had a quick question about like the API Azure CLI extension.
Yeah.
In particular, just like you had mentioned, like there's some functionality that's up that won't ever kind of make it back into the cluster cuddle command. I was wondering, like, there's that new feature for debugging that's really kind of nice to see what the state of all the different controllers are in. I was wondering if you've given any thought to like how the Azure CLI would interact with something like that so that we can get that debugging experience that was added to Azure or the cluster CLI.
Yeah, I saw it. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. Also, the describe cluster seems like something we should piggyback on rather than do it ourselves. I mean, we're using cluster cuddle a lot as a helper underneath in some of these commands, and where we're throwing it away is when we generate the templates and stuff. But I don't intend to reinvent the wheel. Cluster cuddle does a lot of important stuff. So
yeah,
but I don't really have an answer to your question because I don't actually know how the debugging stuff works.
Cool. Yeah. So it sounds like you're actually shelling out to cluster cuddle. So you
a lot of it is shelling out, yeah.
Okay.
To other commands.
So then
calling
probably can make that work.
Command.
Cool.
Cool. We have anything else anyone wants to bring up? Yeah.
To go back to the experimental thing, there's also the managed clusters, which aren't experimental. But I don't think we're there yet in terms of user mileage and feature like support to get it out. I don't think anyone here has been using it or maintaining it. but so we should probably ask those people. But yeah, just my perspective, like from echoes I've heard.
I will be trying out the managed cluster in the following days, next week also. So if I see anything, if I find something interesting, I'll provide feedback.
Great, thanks.
Feedback, I can type. There we go. Great. Going once, going twice. Sold. All right. Thanks everybody for coming. That was great. We'll see you again in the same place in 2 weeks.